Did you also hear that AMCON had to take over certain airlines?
Yes, certainly. AMCON had to, during the banking reforms and all those, AMCON came in to buy off the debts of certain airlines. And some of them went there, maybe airlines like whatever, Arik went there because of the requirement of single obligo. And they had to go to AMCON to consolidate all their debts in one of these things. That's the single obligo issue. But there are others that AMCON, about 3 of them, AMCON took over their debts.
It would seem that all of this was in aim, all of this help, as it were, interventions, should have given the airlines the latitude to restructure. It did not seem that it had any effect whatsoever.
Some of the airlines are restructuring, some of the airlines are paying AMCON. The airlines are paying AMCON back. It's restructured the loan from short term to long term, maybe 15 years, as from 5 years, 3 years, whatever. Like the Air Nigeria loan that was an issue. Yeah. That money, that loan was incurred during Virgin Nigeria. It was under Branson management that loan, about $250 million was incurred. It's something that if you go into it, you feel very sad about how that was incurred. But it was incurred on 20% basis, and then that quantum of debt was there. When he saw that the airline was going down, at the point you heard this thing, he ran out. He took whatever, that 5 million, 11% equity for brand equity, and the other one, which God knows for what. But he left that loan there. He left it for UBA to handle. And at that point, there was nothing UBA could do because the airline was sinking. And so that's why he quickly sold it off and sold that off.
With the liabilities.
He sold it off with the liabilities, with this thing, and immediately the intervention, when he sold it off, there was no intervention fund. Immediately the intervention fund came, he went back to access the intervention fund and got the 35.5 billion into its coffers.
He didn't service the loan?
Eh?
He didn't service the loan in any way?
Which loan? What do you mean? The one he took back. Now Air Nigeria was servicing the loan until it shut down.
You know, that's the fear here, so that they don't shut down those that we already have, and also encourage people, new entrants into the market. If you look at the way AMCON is going about it, normally they buy out of the debt of these ailing maybe airlines, and one would have thought that they will put their managers there to manage it and see how they can revive it. But if we say we're going by the instruction of the central bank not to give them more money, and AMCON finally buys it, how well can they manage it and make sure it doesn't go down as well as the other airlines?
Let me tell you, AMCON, I'm sure, has desks in these airlines. They have desks. They are not managing the airlines. They are not equipped to manage airlines. Yes, you can say they can hire people, but the management of airline has tremendous ramifications. So if you don't know it, you don't go into it. But they have officers, desk officers, some of the airlines, and every day to look at their finances and to make sure they are servicing the loans. And I guess now most of the airlines that AMCON has bought over they are servicing the loans because they have a better leverage now because it's stretched out. It's no longer short-term. It's long-term facility that AMCON has restructured by AMCON restructuring, and so they're able to do this.
How expensive is it to manage an airline? Because you said something about the profit margin, which you say is between 2% and 5%, and that's not encouraging if that's what the businessman who puts his money into such a venture will be getting at the end of the day. And you said the biggest of them all should be talking about 10%. So how expensive is it?
It's pretty expensive. It depends on how much you put into it. That's why it's highly capital intensive. I mean, you are looking at 1737, modern generation 737. You are looking at 80 or to up to $100 million, depending on the specs and other things. You are looking at, airlines $250 million, $200 million to acquire one wide-body aircraft, modern generation wide-body aircraft. That's not a small amount of money. And so what some of our airlines have done is, for some of them, they go out and borrow, and they only get Nigerian banks to guarantee them. But even when they guarantee them, the cost escalates also. They borrow overseas from Exim banks 2%, 3%, and that's the difference between us and airlines overseas. They have easy access to funds with low interest rates. We don't have it here. Our banks don't see airlines that way. Our banks are keyed in for short-term profit. They're not keyed in for long-term profit.
Apparently, the airlines already know that.
Yes.
I mean, so they will not make the mistake of wanting to take loans from the Nigerian banks at 20% or 17%.
Yes.
You know, even the CBN's interest rates are in double digits, you
Yes.
know. So why do you think that they still fell into the trap, as it were? Because if they're already going to banks externally, internationally, it's not a trend that we should encourage. But how do you think that they still, you know, fell into debt?
They had no choice. They had no choice. Only if one or two could go outside to borrow. I know that Jimo Ibrahim did say that when he was buying over Air Nigeria, he borrowed from external resource at 2% interest rate. That's why the controversy is whether he paid off, whether the intervention fund that UBA access is real or whatever. That's a different controversy. One doesn't want to go into it. But I also know that an airline like ARIC is using the Exim Bank to finance this thing and getting Nigerian banks to guarantee it. Okay, so there are only few of them. All others are borrowing locally. I know that Dana borrowed from Diamond Bank. Incidentally, Dana was servicing its loan properly from Diamond Bank. Okay, so this is the situation. They had no choice. That is why there's hue and cry today for an intervention fund. An intervention fund that will help them. An intervention fund with low-digit interest rate, where long-term funds that will be available to them to be able to do what they need to do. There is no way. The directive of CBN is doing its job, but there's no way airlines. There's nothing sweet about loans from Nigerian banks. So you're just saying what the airlines have decided, most of them have decided not to do. Everybody is pushing for the intervention fund. And I think the government, through the Ministry of Aviation and others, has seen that there's need for intervention fund in this sector. That's why they are working on it.
But what was the hue and cry about? Because remember, FAN was here. They talked about the fact that ARIC, either they were not servicing their loans. But now ARIC says, look, what we owe is just the cost of 3 wide-body aircrafts. And then we've got about 22. So they were quite surprised, according to their statement, that they will come and say, look, no more loans for you guys. All of those is over.
The truth of it is they are owing. They are owing. That's why AMCON has bought over that debt. Central Bank is looking at it. If this has happened, it is likely that it could happen again. Let us avoid it. After all, the intervention fund, AMCON coming in, and the intervention fund provided geared towards stabilizing the system. So let us not leave room again for the system, for us to get to that point that will be running to restabilize the system. So that's why I say Central Bank is doing what it should do within the ambit of its responsibility, primary responsibility of the stability of the financial system. But I'm saying that even that directive, whether it came or it didn't come, airlines today have realized that there's no way borrowing from Nigerian banks could help them. And that is why they are looking for, or those who could go out will go out. Those who are not going out are asking for intervention fund. And all of us in the industry think it's overdue for proper intervention funds if our airlines will survive ongoingly.